So imagine you're walking down the street and you come across a sign on the ground that says, "Stand here for dance party." What would you do? So there's a video. This happened in New York. Lots of people looked at it, took pictures of it, and then one woman, she sees it and she stands on it. She looks around, and then here comes this guy, and he's got his boom box. It was very 80s. He's got his boom box, and he breaks it down, and he plays music, and other people come in, and then all of a sudden they're playing music, and the crowd, like there's some people who are obviously part of this setup, but then there are lots of other people. People are dancing. The lady's standing there on her thing, and she's dancing. And I thought it would, and I'll post the video on our Facebook later so you can see the whole thing. But what made the woman decide to stand on the sticker that all the other people who'd come before her had not done? Curiosity. Curiosity is our theme for the month. And what I love about that experience is her experience of the day, and many of all the other people that were around were enhanced by her choosing to be curious and willing. And that's one of the fun things about curiosity. Like, I mean, I can't guess what's going on in other people's minds when they choose not to do something like that, but you can assume that there's probably people who decided not to do it because they were afraid of looking silly or having something happen, or maybe they've just gotten so cynical. Who knows, right? So who knows why people don't choose to do it? But this one person said, let's do it, right? And they got the reward. And so did all the other people, because they were willing to possibly be foolish, be silly, have something happen, but you don't know, right? And so what I think curiosity is a great option over fear and worry. I mean, of course, we're going to care about our loved ones. We're going to have concern maybe if something's going on about them. But often I find we take that to a whole nother level. And what if we use curiosity instead of fear? Like the person in the video, she decided to be curious instead of afraid of what might happen. What if we were curious about, instead of thinking when the other shoe will drop, because I mean, that's worry, but that's also being curious. So we think, when is the other shoe going to drop? Maybe we can instead be curious and say, how is this circumstance going to resolve? And, we might even say, this doesn't seem like there is going to be a good way for this to resolve, but I'm curious to find out. It's moving the way we perceive our situation and our life from being sure that all heck is going to break loose to being like, well, maybe something good can come of this. What if, going all the way to, is great, but we can use our curiosity to say, okay, well, there's lots of things that don't seem to be desirable about this situation, but what can we create from it? And sometimes it's us being willing to see that there's possibilities is how it happens, right? Another way I think about curiosity is that it's about exploration. And I think about like jazz music. Some of you may not know, but I did a lot of jazz choir stuff back in the old days. And one of the wonderful things about improvisation in jazz music is that everybody understands the framework, but then you explore whoever is the soloist, and everybody else supports the person who's doing the improv, and then they trade it around, right? So everybody gets their turn. And even like if the bass player is the one who starts doing the improv, then the piano player will play part of the bass line so that everybody can kind of keep track of what's going on. So they cover for each other, which is cool, right? And so, but you got to, and what's fun about that is you have an exploration, a place to explore and try new things. And sometimes when, hopefully it happens in practice, not in a performance, you improvise something, you go, wow, that really didn't work out. But you don't decide, oh, well, then I'm no good at this particular thing. You just go, well, let's not try that. Let's not do that again. Or let's figure out how to do that in a way that does work. And so when we use our curiosity, we can try things, we can explore things, we can find out what doesn't work just as much as we can find out what does work. And it can be okay. You know, when we let go of the fear of looking silly, well, you know, we're always learning. Learning is just, sometimes it's learning all the wrong ways first, right? Most inventors will tell you that they learned a lot of ways that it didn't work first. So curiosity. And the other thing I love about the musical connection is the idea of dissonance and resolution. So as we're out there exploring or improvising, even in classical music, they'll get to the point where the chords or something feel clashy. And then unless it's like super modern music, it will come to a resolution. And so when we go out there exploring in whatever way we are, we can know that at some point we're going to come to a resolution, whether that is coming back to the way we're back to where we started, which is usually how it works in music, or maybe you've come to a new a new place, a new understanding. That's okay too. So curiosity can lead our search for understanding in the physical world, in our relationships. We talked about that a couple weeks ago, and in the spiritual realm. And that's what so unity was always intended. It's practical Christianity. Unity School for Practical Christianity is one of the original names. So it's about practice and experimentation. They didn't say, oh, just believe that this will work. They said, no, go out. The founders of Unity and the early teachers of Unity and all the ones that come after, hopefully, say that it's not about just talking about doing these things. It's about practicing these things. It's about trying these things and knowing that the spiritual practice that works for one person may not be the right match for another person. Just like some of us like a certain brand of shoes and some of us prefer another brand of shoes. We're not all going to have the perfect fit with the same shoe. Just like we're not all going to have the same perfect fit from the same spiritual practice. So we have to try it out. See, it's practical. It's not one size fits all. So here's some things that I think we could be curious about. What would happen if I was more engaged in spiritual practice? I mean, unless you're the Dalai Lama and you meditate for 5 hours a day, most of us could probably do a little more. And it could, I don't know, it could be different things. It doesn't necessarily mean meditating. It could mean that, or it could mean gratitude journaling, or it could just mean, regular journaling, or it could mean, I don't know. It could mean all sorts of things. What would happen if I tried another spiritual practice or did more in spiritual practice? That's a question. Here's another thing to be curious about. What is mine to do? You know, I say that a lot, but what is mine to do? And this is a question I like to ask myself sometimes. Sometimes when I think maybe I'm about to make not the best decision. I don't do that as much anymore, but I ask, what would the future me want me to do? So it's a way to tap into a bigger wisdom sometimes than us right in this moment. It's like, what would the future me want to do? And not in a way that gets us stuck from making any decision at all, because that's, but just like stop and breathe. What would the future me probably, you know, say, yeah, that was the right choice to do. Now, obviously we can't know it all, but it's a good question to ask, I think. So curiosity is about finding different viewpoints. It's about learning about ourselves and the world, because if we can be curious about ourselves, like, I wonder why. Oh, it was interesting that I had that reaction or that assumption. I wonder what that's about. Just from a place of curiosity, we can learn about ourselves. I wonder what that's about. Curiosity is about creating and experimenting. And having faith as our foundation, just like a jazz band has the other members of the jazz band as the foundation to come back to when you're out experimenting. We have faith and our community as a foundation. We don't have to know all the answers. We don't have to know if it's going to work out. We don't have to know any of those things. We just get curious. So the challenge for this month is to pause and get curious, to be willing to see new things, to ask gently and honestly with faith as our foundation, what's the next brave step? That's all we need to ask. What's their next brave step? And then if you happen to see a sticker on the ground that says, stand here for dance party, maybe you'll check it out or do something else that maybe you wouldn't have tried before. Why not? Let's be curious.